Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I am in Monticello, right outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and I am just in front of Thomas Jefferson's grave. Now, Thomas Jefferson is a very controversial figure today, but in his time, he was seen as being a very great man. I'm going to go over some of that stuff with you right now, okay? So, in his time, the calendar had changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. So when he was born on the Julian calendar, he was born on April 2nd, 1743. But the calendar changed to the Gregorian calendar, which makes it April 13th of 1743 is when he was born. And he was in Shadsville, which is just, a few miles away from here along these mountains. Now, Monticello was built along the Blue Ridge Mountains, and he built it basically because of the view. And he and his brother-in-law decided to create this plot out here because they really liked the view, and this is where they wanted to be buried. So he's born on April 2nd / 13th of 1743. His father would die when he was quite young. He would be well educated, and he would learn to practice law. He went to William and Mary College. He was a very good student. He then became a delegate in the Virginia legislature under the British Crown. But when the war broke out, he was decidedly for the Continental Army and for the Patriots. He was a very, very staunch critic of the king. He actually mentioned in one of the rough drafts of the Declaration of Independence that he blamed a lot of slavery on the British Crown bringing slavery here and then trying to create insurrections here on American soil. There's a lot of drafts of the Declaration of Independence involving criticism of slavery, but all that was eventually marked off because he was one of many people in the process of having to ratify this thing. So he becomes controversial mainly because of the phrase, all men are created equal by their creator with inalienable rights of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Well, he was someone who enslaved slaves, so that's where his controversy starts. But while a lawyer, he actually defended two people of color, trying to get them their freedom because of their mothers being free. He argued this against the British court system, and even though he lost both the cases, the second case, the gentleman that was the defendant, he actually brought in to his own home and paid him wages for the remainder of him and Jefferson's time together. So leading up to the Revolution, they do the Declaration of Independence. They get that ratified. The British Crown says that everyone who signed this thing is going to lose their heads if they get caught. Luckily, through the Revolution, Jefferson wins. He's successful. He's part of the government. He's part of the leading class here in the colonies. He serves as delegate from Virginia to the Congress of the Confederation, the Articles of Confederation. He becomes the minister to France. A really interesting thing is that while he is the minister of France, the Bastille Day takes place. And this takes place when he's in Paris, and the gate to Bastille Gate, the key to it, that was the unofficial start to the French Revolution, is gifted to him to give to George Washington, which is the first violation of the Emoluments Clause. So Jefferson returns, becomes the Secretary of State under the Washington administration. He runs for election for the 1800 election, but loses out to Adams because of the way the Electoral College works. He becomes the vice president to Adams being the president. This was the end of their friendship for the longest time. They were great friends during the Revolution, and now they were going to be kind of bitter enemies because of the Federalist and Anti-Federalist aspects of their policies. Jefferson, being a staunch anti-federalist, and related to form the Democratic Republican Party against the Federalist Party of Adams and Alexander Hamilton. Jefferson undermines Adams a lot, and through the XYZ affair, a lot of the aspects of the Adams administration, the Alien Extradition Act, Jefferson is against Adams on everything. Jefferson is opposed to strong federal government, where Adams is like, we need a strong federal government, because that's the reason why we had the Constitution versus the Articles of Confederation. After Adams's first term, he loses. This election is quite bad. So this election between Adams and Jefferson, again, this is leads to Jefferson winning. They become a peaceful transfer of power, and then Jefferson has a pretty good, successful first term. His second term, however, his vice president ends up in his reelection. His vice president ends up shooting the former Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton. This is the Burr v. Hamilton duel that happens in New Jersey. This is kind of over the partisan politics under the Jefferson administration. Jefferson's second term, he has to actually indict, and there's a trial on Aaron Burr, not for the murder of Hamilton, but for treason that Burr is ultimately found innocent of. Then there is the Embargo Act. Now, the Embargo Act is basically because of the Barber War and American shipping. So the United States is basically telling these British and French, we're not going to trade with you because you keep confiscating our ships. We're not going to trade with any warring powers. Is this similar to what Jefferson, FDR did at the beginning of World War II? We're not going to trade with any warring nations. And Jefferson meant it. Jefferson said, we're not going to do it. We're not trading with any of these foreign nations, which ended all trade with Britain and France. This was devastating to the American economy because the Americans were reliant on a lot of European goods and services for here because they couldn't produce them here. Another thing that Jefferson did during his tenure as president was the Louisiana Purchase. Now, Louisiana Purchase was about 13 cents an acre and was double the size of the United States overnight. Now, Jefferson backed Monroe in this deal, but Monroe basically did all the negotiations. This happened under Thomas Jefferson's term in office. Now, after the purchase, he needed to find out what was out there. They literally believed that they could find dinosaurs out here in Louisiana. So Lewis and Clark were supposed to go figure that all out. So Meriwether Lewis came to Monticello and learned all of the wealth of knowledge that Jefferson had in his library. And so he learned all of this stuff, and then he sent Meriwether Lewis and Clark out to go find out what was in Louisiana. So in his house is a collection of all these things, artifacts that Meriwether Lewis and Clark found in Louisiana when they came back. So this was he has a large collection. His first term has seemed successful. His second term, which a lot of presidents' second term seemed to be a failure. The Embargo Act destroyed Jefferson's second term. The Embargo Act left Jefferson with very few fans in Washington. He retired from politics and he moved back to Monticello. Here, him and Adams actually started corresponding with each other and rekindled their friendship. Abigail noted that this did not. Abigail Adams noted this was not a smooth transition. Is that one of Jefferson's responses to Adams' letters was basically get out of here. But they were able to amend their relationships, and they became friends, even though they never saw each other again. And about 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson dies. Just a few hours later, John Adams would die. Famous last words of John Adams is, "At least Jefferson lives," not knowing that Jefferson had actually died earlier in the day. But so the first early two presidents, the first of the three presidents, actually, the first three presidents who died on the 4th of July was Jefferson, then Adams, and then later when Monroe would die on July 4th as well. But basically, the Library of Congress after the War of 1812 was burnt down. So Jefferson donated a lot of his books to the Library of Congress. Many of those books are still there, and he had thousands of books. Most of which, after his death in 1826, were given to either the University of Virginia, which he helped found with Monroe, or they had been sold off to try to read the collection of the debt money that was owed. So Jefferson had a lot of debt when he died. His slaves were eventually freed after his death, and then he was buried here. This monument behind me is not the original. It was designed. The U.S. government brought this monument in a couple of decades later, But this is basically Thomas Jefferson. There's way more than I can ever really get into a short video like this, but I'm not really able to get into all the information, unfortunately. But the controversy is, with his children, with Sally Hemings, his legacy is still with them. They still come back and they do this property and celebrate. This is where their story begins as well. His ideas on how slavery was morally bad, but he didn't have the ability to stop it. And expansion seemed to be a way of expanding slavery, even though I don't think Jefferson really believed or understood what that would mean. So it is controversial because his words rang hollow for so many thousands of people in the country when they were written. But that more perfect union, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, we each and every single day and decade establish that more perfect union by expanding on it and building upon the greatness of the ideas of the United States. And a lot of those great ideas are thanks to Thomas Jefferson, our third president of the United States. This is Nathaniel Gavronsky signing off from Monticello. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and as always, stay wise, America.